buddy Mark Kramer, which is another good friend of Mark, Robert Kramer, went out there, and he didn't know we were having a problem with the boat at the time. So we dive off the boat and go through these big moon jellies like frogs, going in and out of these moon jellies, and then it was so beautiful, it was so crystal clear. We could just see this black line as far as we go. Deeper down and deeper down, it's just getting bigger, 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 bigger. And I think I had 20 nitrox, which is good, for about 200 feet. And but it was so clear, I ended up going shooting. Oh, I don't mind. Oh, I don't mind. Okay, that's deep. Yes, that's past recreational. Just past. Yeah.
Escambia County Redevelopment Agency regular meeting, February 5th, 2026, 9 o'clock a.m. Please turn your cell phone to vibrate, silence, or the offsetting. Board of County Commission allows the person to speak regarding an item on the agenda. Speaker is limited to 2 minutes unless otherwise determined by the chairman. Is there proof of publication?
Yes, this meeting was advertised in the Pensacola News-Journal, January 29th, 2026.
Thank you. Are there any speakers for public forum?
Not to my knowledge.
Thanks. Technical and public service consent agenda?
Yes, recommendation concerning community redevelopment agency meeting minutes, December 11th, 2025.
Chair entertain a motion. We have a motion, second, please vote. Pass unanimous, thank you. Budget and finance?
Recommendation concerning the cancellation of residential rehab grant program liens. Recommendation concerning residential rehab grant program funding and lien agreements. And recommendation concerning residential roof program funding and lien agreements.
Chair entertain a motion if there's no discussion. A motion and second, please vote. That passes unanimous, thank you. Mr. Director?
For discussion item, we are asking that the board reinstate the sewer connection part of the residential rehab improvement grant for non-homestead homeowners with stipulations that have been revised in the agreement for the grant. The terms added were additional terms, the additional terms and agreements where property owners must provide the current lease agreements if property is occupied, or a draft lease agreement showing current rental rate at the time of application if the property is unoccupied. Property owners must not increase rent by more than 5% during the 3-year lien term, and property owners must submit lease agreements annually to CRA staff for the duration of the lien. Also, if the property is sold, transferred, or otherwise conveyed during the 3-year preferred above lien without the express permission of the CRA, or if the funding agreement executed concurrently with this lien agreement is terminated prior to the expiration of a 3-year period, the homeowner agrees that their heirs or assigned shall repay the total amount of the grant dispersed by the CRA up to and including the amount recited within the agreement. And also, repayment shall not be required if the property is sold during a 3-year period to a homeowner whose household income is at or below the 80% AMI as verified and approved in writing by the CRA.
So if they sell it to another developer, they have to pay the amount back in
Yes, they have
full,
to
correct?
yes. They say within that 3-year lien period. So we're trying to make it, if they do sell it to someone that's that's affordable.
And it's a 50% match,
Yes.
so they'll put 50% in.
Yeah, up to 10,000.
Okay. Any more questions?
Excuse me. Commissioner May, I know this is something that the Pensacola Perdita Bay Estuary supports. I support it wholeheartedly. When you look at the environmental impact of Bio Chico, Bio Grande, and many of our waterways, this is something that will help with that, so I'm in full support of this program.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner Kohler. I think that probably in the joint town hall meeting, probably 70% of the people there were concerned about septic to sewer conversion. So this helps our commercial corridor, which in turn should, well, it helps our residential, but it should be able to look at helping our commercial as well. And with that question, so is this just residential? What happens to commercial
We can do
property?
the commercial also.
With the same?
Yeah. The commercial, I think we have to go back and look at that with the commercial grant, probably to add that caveat to it with because you can get more with the commercial grant than you would with the residential rehab. So we might have to look at that a little.
So we probably should make that equal, in my opinion. So what currently exists with commercial?
That's
for
the 25,000.
matching or
Matching,
just?
yeah, 25,000 matching.
So I will say ECUA charges different for commercial properties, and they do charge those commercial properties impact fees, and those can be significant.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we could look into changing that for the commercial.
And so when it does that, the 25, it would help not only with the sewer, but it would help with the grease traps and all those other
Right.
things. Yeah. So I agree with Commissioner Haltberger that, it is a lot more for commercial to convert. So
Yeah.
I would support keeping those numbers high.
Okay.
All right, so I think you have support. I just bring it back and get it ratified.
Okay.
All right. Any questions? All right, thank you for the discussion. With that, we stand adjourned. Madam Chair.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Welcome to the committee meeting of the whole. Please turn your cell phones to silent or the off setting. This meeting is officially called to order. Commissioner May, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance.
Has this meeting been properly advertised?
Madam Chair, this meeting was advertised in the Pensacola News Journal and the board's weekly meeting schedule on January 29th, 2026.
Wonderful, thank you. And just to set the stage, this is a meeting where we will hear from staff and we'll be able to discuss among ourselves. This is not for public input or public comment. That is reserved for the board meeting on 2/29, where we will actually be discussing it and deciding how to move forward. Public forum for that board meeting, which is on the 19th of February, will begin at 9 a.m. and the meeting itself will begin at 9:30. So with that, we will move into presentations.
Good morning, I'm Christy Hankins, I'm with the County Attorney's Office. Tim Day is also present. We were asked to look into the present status of customary use, and so we put together a small presentation just to let the board know where it stands since there was a repeal of an act that had been in place up until 2025. So in the previous statutory requirements from July 1st, 2018 to June 23rd, 2025, we're on 163.035. I'm sorry, let me know if you can't, I apologize, I'm not close enough on the microphone. I'm used to being loud enough. And you can see up here, this is taken from when this particular statute was repealed in 2025. And this is basically the layout of how it worked, was that the public hearing had to be held to adopt the ordinance, but the notice of intent had to go out to each property owner. It was parcel by parcel. And then after all that happened, the hearing was held, then it had to be filed in the court, and a complaint had to be filed by the county, and then the county had to, or the municipality, and then they had to prove all of the elements. It was a much more property owner friendly, and it allowed for the property owners to join as interveners. But in 2025, that was reversed, and we went back to the customary use law that existed under common law prior to that. And this is the staff analysis saying how it would change back. So you can do a customary use by conducting proper hearings before the board and then passing an ordinance. And then the property owners would have to file the lawsuit. And it'd be a case-by-case basis, but not on a parcel-by-parcel basis, which was much more challenging. Walton County down the street, they went under the previous 163035 and have faced significant hurdles. They lost an easement that they had previously possessed. They lost, there's significant, they would be a cautionary tale on this, but they went under the 163035. Currently, there's a case that's pending, that's up on appeal in the 11th Circuit for Reddington Beach. They were also under 163.035, but they passed theirs before 163.035 went into effect. And so they had the affirmative defense of customary use. And currently, that is waiting to see, that hearing will be in February 24th in front of the 11th Circuit. And that will probably tell, I would imagine that'll give us the best guidance as to where the courts are going with customary use and the requirements and whether or not it's going to be well accepted. So here are the elements of customary use: ancient, reasonable, without interruption, and free from dispute. And if you have an owner that has the property, then they would have, whatever their use, it would have to be consistent with the customary use that's currently on, that's been determined. And that is a determination. It comes from the case City of Daytona Beach versus Tonorama. Tonorama was not a customary use case. It was a case where a property owner who also owned a pier had decided to put up an observation tower, and a competing company had decided to sue the City of Daytona as well as the property owner, because the City of Daytona issued the permit. And he decided to sue on the grounds of prescriptive easement, not on the grounds of customary use. It went all the way to the Florida Supreme Court, and the Florida Supreme Court reversed the lower courts who had found that the tower had to be torn down. They reversed those lower courts for a finding that it did not have to be torn down, that prescriptive easement did not apply. But there was discussion then at this time within that opinion about customary use, which is what you see before you, and that discussion has become the law of the land ever since. These are the things that it does, these are the restrictions on customary use. It doesn't create interest. It can't be revoked by the landowner. It can be regulated, and it should be appropriately regulated, and it can be abandoned by the public. This would be your procedure. It's a standard ordinance procedure, so notice and hearing. The evidentiary basis that I've seen in the court cases has been sworn testimony, photographs, historical documentation, expenditures by the county, and we would want to have very specific, well, not specific, but not parcel specific, but we want to limit it to a geographical area, and any other sources that would provide information. And then you would have to make legislative findings of facts as you would for any ordinance that you pass. These are some of the definitions, and Tim Day's going to take over from here. We've heard a lot of definitions of words that have been used. We want to make sure everybody has the same legislative understanding of the law in this area.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Tim Day, Deputy Director for Natural Resources Management Department. What I anticipate is you get public testimony at the next BCC meeting is there's a series of terms that are likely to be utilized, and I wanted to make sure we were all working off of kind of the same definitions. These are all based on Florida statute. One of the kind of harder ones to deal with is mean high water, which is from a regulatory stance from the Sheriff's Department, where they try to work on trespass issues. It's generically looked at as wet sand. By definition, though, it's actually an elevation around just under a foot, and essentially at a summertime high tide, mean high water is underwater. During a winter high tide, the actual high tide mark is somewhere up on the dry sandy beach. Because our tides sometimes are high, sometimes are low. This is based on a 19-year average of tides to establish. Our real point, what we utilize it for example, for Horace, a surveyor would do that to do that southern boundary for total acreage to establish density. If we tried to use mean high water as an actual location to enforce regulations, you would have to have a surveyor out there each time to establish exactly where it is. As our sands, even on a day-to-day basis, we may get a little erosion one day, you may get a little accretion the next. The next one I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about beach nourishment. Under Florida statute, it's defined essentially as the process to restore an eroded beach that is also going to involve placing sands within the submerged lands of the Gulf of Mexico. So it's kind of like what's going on Pensacola Beach right now. As part of that process to do a nourishment project, and we did start this after Hurricane Ivan, you set an erosion control line, which is a mean high water survey on a particular date. And the intent of that is to fix the southern boundary so that when you conduct that beach nourishment, you have a very clear delineation of what is being filled on sovereign submerged lands, which would become public beach, and the upland side, which would remain private property. The coastal construction control line, basically that exists on all barrier islands within Florida. There are two of them. The first one was established in the 70s. Very generally speaking, we prohibit all development other than dune walkovers seaward of that line. There is a newer one established in the 80s, and that's generally closer to, in this case, it's closer to Perdita Key Drive. And it's a regulatory line for DEP that if you propose construction seaward of it, the state has additional regulatory standards for construction that they have to meet. So it triggers the need for a permit. The last is just differentiating between beach nourishment and dune restoration. After Hurricane Ivan, the county embarked a FEMA-funded dune restoration project in which we placed almost 1 million cubic yards of sand up near construction areas along the key. And the purpose of it was to provide a minimum level of protection for both the upland development and the county's infrastructure, the roads, utilities, et cetera. Since then, we have done 2 dune enhancements, which has involved additional vegetation, and we actually just closed a solicitation where a little bit later this year we're going to be doing even further dune plantings on the key. But in terms of something for customary use or has beach nourishment occurred under Florida statute, it is not. Although it's from an intuitive perspective, I can understand where the public could see we place sand on the beach. Of course, you've restored the beaches, but for purposes of creating public lands, that process has not occurred on the key to date. And so that concludes definitions. We'd be happy to help facilitate the discussion as the board feels fit. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. To assist the board, we have 2 maps of Perdido Key to lay out the portion, the east side and the west side is how we've laid it out. This is the east side, and you see in the middle there is the easement that we already have. That's that 75-foot perpetual easement. And then to the right of that is the 4,000 feet for which, if there would be a customary use, that would be the area on the east side. It's that 4,000 feet out to the park at the Johnson Beach Park. And then the next slide is the west side. And you can see in the dark blue, that's not only access, that's property that we actually own on Perdido Key, on the sand. So you've got about 1 mile on one side and about 1.25 miles on the other. So we are open if we can help the board.
Madam Chair. Christy, can you go back to the other map, the first map? Okay, so, yeah, so the second map is only breaking down the western part of this map. Is that how you're doing that?
No, sir. So this map is the eastern side of the key, so it's between Johnson Beach and Perdita Key State Park. We have the three little slivers you see are county public accesses.
Yeah.
And then
All right, can you go to the next map? I'm sorry, Tim.
when we
Not
go,
being clear what about it.
that's the wrong way. So this is the west side, so it goes from the state park to the Floribama. And on
Okay.
the west side of the park, we only have beach access number 4, which is the area highlighted in blue.
All right, can you go back to the first map again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that 75-foot easement, that was the issue a couple years ago?
Yes.
Was it just last year? Okay. Okay. And that's the only portion that's related to, is that stretch that's in darker blue?
It was approximately 1.2 miles
Okay.
in width, and it was memorialized on the plat as 75-foot.
Okay,
Easement.
and then that doesn't extend anywhere west of the state park? That's just this portion on this one map?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Well, the 4,000?
This is what you're talking about.
No, I'm
No.
talking about the darker blue over here. Yeah, that's the, and that doesn't go any closer to Johnson Beach, nor does it go west of the state park?
Correct.
That's what you're saying?
This was
Okay.
part of a plat
Yeah.
from the 50s,
Yeah,
and
okay.
so it's only that 1.2 miles.
All right, so, and another thing Christy mentioned, just making sure I understand the geography, where the customary use, if we exerted that, would it not pertain to here because that easement already exists? Is that what she said?
Two thoughts. One is we are not recommending doing anything that might disrupt this 75-foot easement. So I would avoid overlaying anything on this easement. So we are not recommending messing with the 75-foot easement. And for the board's information, it's our interpretation that customary use is not an all or nothing proposition. It can be smaller pieces. It's not all of the beach or none. You may choose to go in that direction, but it's not an all or nothing proposition. It needs to be based on what you believe the evidence to show you as to where historical, recreational, customary use
Okay.
exists.
So in the most broad interpretation, what you're saying is this 4,000 feet that's east of the 75-foot easement and west of Johnson Beach, that would be one portion that we could exert. And then on that other slide, it would be the portion west of the state park that potentially we could exert.
I think what they're demonstrating to you is the areas where public memorialized access is lacking, meaning you don't appear to have easements or county-owned property.
Right.
This 1.25 miles, this 1 mile, and the other 4,000 feet, these are your significant weaknesses as far as memorialized easements or ownership.
So with the most broad interpretation of customary use would be potentially those, so we're talking about primarily 3 sections there. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have lots of questions. What does prescriptive easement mean?
If you, to establish a prescriptive easement, you'd have to establish, it's basically like similar to adverse possession, but that's not the whole of it. So you'd have to establish there was continuous, notorious, uninterrupted use for 20 years is the general specific period of time. There'd have to be actual knowledge of the owner, or it had to be so open and notorious and visible that it, like adverse possession, and then it would have to be for a limited and defined area of land. So it is more parcel by parcel requirements.
Okay, and then the picture that we're looking at here, I'm assuming the light gray lines are parcel by parcel, and it looks like some of those go all the way to the water line, but some of them do not?
So what's generally reflected there is, just think of it this way, that's really just the map that, that's done by the property appraiser, so they have to define a line. And so I believe that southern line may reflect an old erosion control line before it was vacated, but it doesn't reflect where their deeded access goes. Because as we kind of talked about earlier, as the, day by day, year by year, that shoreline is adjusting. And so to produce a map, you would have to, to have an accurate map, you would have to produce it very often to make it look the same. Generally speaking, the west side of the island tends to accrete sand, so it's generally a building beach, and that's part of why I would suggest that where it looks like the sands are going beyond the parcel lines.
Okay, and then I know on Pensacola Beach, it's drastically different, but they're all under different leases. The folks that live out here or that own property on Perdido Key, do some of their deeds say all the way to the water line and some of them say mean high water line? Do we know what the deeds say?
So their southern boundary would have been mean high water. So and we can, I can provide them before tonight's meeting just so you have it plenty of time. Just examples of, we can do a handful of deeds so you can see it. But
Okay, and they're consistent?
But their southern boundaries are tied to the mean high water.
Okay, perfect. And then you mentioned dune enhancements. What funded the dune enhancements? Was that grant funded or did that come from somewhere else?
So the initial one was primarily funded by FEMA. During that time, we also received several state grants. And so basically all the improvements have happened, have had almost no county match. During the original FEMA construction, there always is a little local match with a FEMA project. But the county has not had local funds expended towards dune restoration.
Okay, so we haven't taken taxpayer, like ad valorem dollars or LOST money and put into dune restoration on Perdido Key?
I'm going to say that's correct with the exception of is we did have a little local match in every FEMA project. So
Madam Chair, can we clarify what the little bit of match was?
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to, so generally on a hurricane, when we get match, it's usually a 75-25 split. The 25 is half state, half county. With Hurricane Ivan, we received some additional consideration where that went to a 90-10 split. And so my best recollection is on those FEMA projects throughout the county is it would have been 90% FEMA, 5% state, 5% county.
So none of us, even Commissioner May and I weren't on the board. This is over 20 years ago. So was that a $10 million project? Was it a $5 million project? If you don't know, later today is fine. If you don't know all these numbers off the top of your head.
Yes, I can get the information. It's fairly expensive because ultimately the dune restoration, so if you remember photos from Ivan, the island was pretty well destroyed. If something was built like in the 80s or before, it was generally destroyed by Ivan. And so we did have working agreements. The contractor was mobilized. They went out, they collected debris, they sifted sand to create sand to go back, clean sand to go back onto the beaches. Yeah. We also took sands that were dredged out of the intercoastal waterway by the Army Corps restoring commerce and brought those sands to help do the project. So if
it was a $20 million project, this means it was still $1 million of local money 20 years ago.
Yes, it's I'll double check it. It probably exceeds $10 million pretty easily.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And then is there parking at Beach Access 1 or is that strictly for pedestrians to access the beach?
There currently is parking there's a north-south right-of-way leading to Access 1. I would have to recount the spaces. I think there's approximately 28 spaces there at Access number 1.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Another thing to keep in mind, if we do have a public hearing to consider an ordinance. If you remember a few years ago, the state legislature changed the obligations for an ordinance, and most ordinances now require some sort of business impact study to be done unless it meets an exemption. This doesn't appear to be something that might meet an exemption, so that's another piece of the backup and research that would be needed in order to proceed with an ordinance.
What is the process to having that study done?
Well, I mean, I think you have some leeway in what that would look like. I do know that in a very formal sense, we have used UWF Haas Center for some things. I need some board direction as far as whether or not that's something that you would be interested in pursuing, but that's been one of our resources in the past. It's just food for thought.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So none of the discussion related to this has any impact on Pensacola Beach, correct? No. Okay, I mean, literally, I mean, not just very little impact, it literally has no impact, correct?
The Pensacola Beach situation is so factually different from this, it is night and day.
Okay.
All of Santa Rosa Island is publicly owned at the very root of it. The lease lines are drawn differently than the deed lines out on Perdido Key. It is night and day. It is apples and oranges. It has nothing to do with this conversation, in my opinion.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure.
When you, Tim, when you pull the dollar amount that we spent with the dune enhancements, can you also drop those on one of these maps so we know where they are in correspondence to the beach accesses in the easement?
Yes, I can. It's, when we go to, sorry. So very generally, if I were to overlay the dune restoration area, with an aerial, you would generally see a line about the same width as a 75-foot easement, just south of the line of development. So it's on Pensacola Beach where the dune exists, and you see how the development noses up to it. It would look very similar to that, but I do have drawings that have the dune surveyed.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Commissioner Strohberger?
So I've been getting surveys sent to me from property owners on Perdido Key, and they clearly show that they have the deed, they own the property. Is she still there? Madam Attorney, there's no dispute that these are private properties.
No, that's why you're having this conversation, is because I do believe that there is private ownership based on deeds, and then what rights historically has the public gained across them. So I'm not disputing that there is private ownership.
Okay. So as you can imagine, I've been getting a lot of information from you, Tim, about this subject. I've been reading a lot about Walton County. And you correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, maybe you just, shake your head or something. I don't know. That was like an $8 million lawsuit. So I think there's some misconceptions about this, about what customary use is and what the property owner's rights are. I think somebody had said once that, no, it was, when customary use was thrown back to us to decide, then it was what customary use would and what that would look like, particularly in Perdido Key, that that the property owners, that there would be no lawsuits. Property owners still have their day in court, and every one of them can still sue, right? They can, just like they did in Walton County.
I do think the situation is a little bit different just factually than Walton County, but I've been getting the email traffic similar to many of you, and I do think that we have been warned that there will be lawsuits.
I have been warned also.
Yes.
So for me, this is both an easy and a difficult issue. But I think everyone feels the same way. It's easy for me because we're the legislative body, right? We're the legislative body for the county. And our job is simple. It's to protect life, liberty, and property. And I'm very grounded in my beliefs, and I don't believe my principles are better than anyone else's principles. I just believe that I'm very grounded in what I believe. And I believe in property rights, and I also believe in public access. And I don't think they should be in conflict. I also don't believe that the public's perceived right to trample on private property trumps property rights. I mean, where do we draw the line if we don't draw the line right now? How do I know that's not going to happen on my own personal property? I got an interior lot. Why does it stop here? Why isn't it on Old River? Why isn't it on that side? Why isn't it on that side of the water of that island? I just don't know where it ends, and I just can't let mob rule. I know elections are what drives decisions a lot of times. This is not an election issue for me, not because I don't have an election, but because this is foundational for me. I believe in property rights. I've traveled around the world, and I've been to countries without property rights. We have them here, and people own that property. And what you think, and I've heard, is that we don't want the property. We just want to be able to be on the beach there. You won't own it. The property owners will still own it, and they'll still have to clean that beach, right? They'll own that property, and they'll have to. Yes, they will. And that's what happens in Walton County. You can shake your head, but you don't know. They have to clean. They still own that property, and they have to clean the property. The county does not own it. They've taken no custody of that, and you saw the slide. They've taken no count. They take no ownership of it, so there's no liability for the county, but there will be for the property owners if someone gets hurt on there, just like personal property, where I live, at my house.
That's a good question. So in a world, if we did decide to move forward with this, life safety is a huge aspect of that. What would be the county's responsibility of having lifeguards out there, or does that fall on the individual property owners?
First of all, you're not ever obligated to provide lifeguards. You're not obligated to do that. There are areas, even on Pensacola Beach, which is publicly owned, you're not obligated to have them everywhere where you have a public access or use of the property. So that would still be a question for this board to deal with. We have been providing, I believe, some lifeguards out on Perdido Key at these access points already.
But those are within the easement, correct?
Yeah, or these access points is where I thought that we had them stationed. Commissioner Stroberger may know better than I, but I think we had them.
But not on the private property, right?
Right.
Right.
So theoretically, if something was to happen at the backyard of one of the condos and someone was to lose their life, could that family sue the condo for not having a lifeguard?
I mean, people sue for lots of things. Yeah, I mean, usually there are statutory protections and legal authority that helps anytime you're dealing with a drowning case. It's obviously a dangerous thing. You're Mother Nature, acts of God, that sort of thing. But, people do come up with unique ideas for lawsuits all the time.
Is there anything in the new or the repealing of the legislation that provides protection for the property owners?
No, I'm not aware of anything that was added to help protect with liability. I think existing case law would govern.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see, Commissioner Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this call today. In my little over 3 years on the board, I don't think we've had anything this polarizing as of today. On any given day, we get 20 emails on both sides, for and against. And so I reflect on what's the goal. There's 335,000 people in Escambia County. I think we all want more beach access. But I also agree with Commissioner Stroberger and the attorney. I think that we can get more beach access, but there needs to be give and take on both sides. I support that. when you look at the current 75 feet, it's on the, heading towards Johnson Beach and the other 400, that 4,000 feet right there, I think you have some opportunity there and over towards the Floribama. But I look at this, and I'll share it from a different perspective. I lived at 1008 North Roos in North Hill for 6 years. Right across the street's Alabama Square. It was less than 75 feet, I can assure you, from my sidewalk to the park. Now, I didn't control when someone left a beer can or cigarette, or I'd have to pick it up. I didn't like it. I didn't like that at all. But I love living across the park. And occasionally I'd have some homeless person sleep in a hammock and stuff like that. There is real problems, Steve. There's real problems with this, and we have a responsibility, no matter what we do, to clean up the beach, just like we do at Pensacola Beach. If we do this, the homeowners out there do not deserve to have garbage all over their beach, no matter what we decide. But I don't think, and my recommendation would be, for the folks here today, and Tim, have we had any meetings with the customary use folks and the beach condo people and the town hall with the county to see if there's any common ground?
To my knowledge, we haven't had anything
I have.
specific.
I have.
But what I was going to say is Commissioner Stroberger has brought it up as a topic in his recent meeting.
Has there been any sort of give and take, Commissioner Stroberger?
No, I think the condo owners and the property owners out there are pretty firm in that they own the property. It's black or white. Do we own it or not? That's what they've said. Universally, they've said, do we own the property or don't we own the property? I had a town hall last week, and I had I went to a neighborhood watch this week, another neighborhood watch last week, probably attended by, between the three, maybe 130 people. It was a full house at the town hall. Between all those discussions, I brought this issue up. And 2 people raised their hands about customary use. The rest of them didn't know anything about it. They didn't know about it. In fact, at the town hall, they wanted to move on. It wasn't a subject they wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about Beulah. And we did. We talked about Beulah. That's what we started out talking about. But I thought it was something that, it is something that affects the whole county. The whole county probably needs to know about it and discuss it. And there's little or no interest. And in fact, when was it? Was it yesterday? I think it was Tuesday night. I was at the neighborhood watch. And yeah, it was Tuesday night. And those people believe the same way I do. That was in Avondale. They believe like I do, that property rights is pretty foundational right, and that I should protect that. That's my duty to do that. And they argued, even as we spoke, for those property rights, because I think they put themselves in the property owners' shoes on the beach because they're property owners.
Well, I can look out in the audience and see that there's people that care about this. My suggestion would be is to have staff and potentially look at what areas that could potentially be customary use, if there are any. And I think that's reasonable.
We don't have to take action. Is that right,
No
Madam
one's
Attorney?
no one's-
We don't have to take action.
If I could finish,
Here's
thank
what
you.
I've been
Thank
working
you. I
on.
was talking first, point of order, Madam Chair. I was asking if we could look and have public hearing, not take action today, but at least have a conversation to see where we could get on something. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is on Johnson's Beach, there was some fallacy that we wanted to buy the beach. No one ever wanted to buy the beach. I wanted a daily rate. So $4, just like the state park. People say, well, $25 ain't that much. Well, it is for a lot of people that live in Myrtle Grove. So the people out there, it used to be open to everyone. When I was in E2, I went out there. I get it. We have to support that. I think the board should write the Department of Interior and ask for a daily rate. You know, I know it's $45 a year, $7 or $25 for 7 days. But there doesn't seem like any reason why we shouldn't ask the Department of Interior for a daily rate. You know, a lot of people that aren't on their vacation can't spend 7 days out at the beach. They can take their kid for their birthday party. So I would love to have the board support something like that for beach access as well. So I don't know where the board's going to land, but I do think we need to have a discussion. I'm not saying, Commissioner Strober, we need to take action today, not asking that.
No, we can't take action today, or at this meeting especially. But here's what the conversations I've
Commissioner
been
Sherburne,
having.
just a moment. If you're in the audience and you're flipping the bird to us, that is also inappropriate, sir, with the glasses. So let's not do that.
Who did that?
Thank you.
So here are the conversations I've been having, because I don't think the problem is getting to the beach. So, and getting to the beach and be able to use the beach. I'm in conversations with the gentleman that owns the parcels next to, a couple of parcels next to beach access number 3. And we've sent him the appraisals. We haven't got to come back from him yet.
Yeah, we'd engaged quite a bit last year, and the difference between, the appraised value and his asking price is approximately $1 million. We're communicating with him to make sure that he's still firm on that price, and are intending to bring it for the board's consideration, to see how we might fund the difference. There is a Restore Pot 1 project that will pay the average of 2 appraisals, and we do have funding in that Restore Pot 1 project as well to do the improvements if it's acquired by the board.
That's pretty key. I didn't know that. You told me that yesterday, that the improvements would be also funded. So we would have, it would eliminate a lot of the issues we have out there at that beach access point number 3, where everyone's getting stuck in the sand too, probably. The other thing is, at legislative days, I was in Tallahassee with some other commissioners, and I talked briefly with Secretary Lambert, the Department of Environmental Protection Secretary. She put me in contact with her deputy. She said they have these kinds of partnerships. I asked about a partnership with Escambia County and our 2 state parks out there on Perdido Key Drive. That's east and west, the state parks. And we can come up with a way for all Escambia residents, and I just mean Escambia residents now, to be able to use those parks. We'll have to agree on how we do that. And I expect to have a meeting with him personally in the next couple of weeks to try to iron out some of those details. So that would provide more beach access for everybody. Problem is, I don't think that's going to be enough. It just won't be enough because, yeah, that's exactly why. Because compromise is not something we come to easily here. It's always a fight to the death. And that's where we're going to go. We're going to spend taxpayers' money on a lawsuit, a big lawsuit. And what's going to happen is we're going to still not own the property, and the property owners are still going to have the liability and the garbage to pick up when someone's playing beer pong in their backyard, or just trashing the beach in general, or someone steps on some glass on their property. I'm trying to avoid all that. So I'm still going to pursue more property, beach access. That's what I want to do, and I think that's the right thing to do. I think this whole subject of customary use is trouble. It's asking for trouble. And it's not going to be easy to prove. Am I right? It's not going to be easy to prove. You can't just say, I went fishing here, or I used to go swimming here. That's not enough. That's not enough. It's got to be historical. It's got to be uninterrupted.
So I could, oh, I'm sorry.
Can I add a second question to that? Currently, they do have the ability to swim and stay in the wet sand as well. So the customary use is more of the dry sand issue?
Yes, it is. It's a dry sand issue. The wet sand, or except for, of course, when the tide comes in the summer, that's protected. That's protected by state law. It can't be, anything below the mean high tide is protected by state law. And so they could certainly use that. They could, fish to their heart's content, put in, lay out there, be there with their chairs, anything like that. But as far as the dry sand, that would be where the customary use would come in.
So
and
let me
it does
ask you this.
require-
So the compromise they ended up with after the millions of dollars, and I don't think it's even done yet, is that it was 20 feet. That's what they came up with, 20 feet. The property owners still own the property. They have to clean the beach. That's still their responsibility, not the county's responsibility. And what was my last point? It's not getting any better. That's why I got to write these things down. It's still there. They still have the liability on that beach. And one of the issues that, and it's not and I've heard this many, many times, is these folks, you know, more likely it's the spring breakers coming in and using the pool, using the bathrooms, and all that stuff, because the porta potties are kind of a lousy idea out there. I don't like those, and that's another thing I'm pursuing. I'd like to get something resembling a Portland Loo that we can haul in and out of there. That's a lot nicer, a lot more welcoming for the western gate of Florida. Yeah, I think that's all I got. I'll come back.
Commissioner Berry?
Yeah, thank you. So, Mike, are you, back to what you were saying, are you asking to see if the board is interested in having the staff, like, look at the different sections and see where we can make the best immediate case for customary use? Because is that
I
what
would
you're
like
saying?
that, and then I would like to have a public discussion with these folks and the people in the condos to see if we can get to some sort of compromise. I do agree with Commissioner Stroberger on two things. When you look at the definition on customary use, I do think without interruption and free from dispute is a problem. I don't know where it's going to land in court. I don't know that, right? I don't know. But I'd prefer not to get into a lawsuit. I'd rather try to work to get more customary use with you folks and the condo owners. And to answer your question in short, yes.
Okay, I mean, I think that's a good, it seems like a good idea to try to see. Is part of the documentation for Tim, so as, you know, as the county would hypothetically try to exercise or to document to document customary use, I mean, that's the creation of that case or that file is not just the product of information that we possess currently, right? We would then take, like if we were, say we were looking at one section and this seems to be where the most, you know, I don't know that anybody knows more about the goings-on out there than you or maybe Chips, but, you know, where, you know, one of you thinks that we have the best case. And, you know, we have some documentation, but then would we take information from the public to also to supplement that file that we're building for what our case is? Is that how that works, Lee?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, I mean, what I would suggest in terms of staff making determinations of kind of the best spots, you know, there's some softball areas out there, and it's the easy one is out by Floribama. That is an area that, or, you know, any commercial restaurants, these are areas where, for as long as it's been in existence, they've invited people there, you know, there's a benefit to their products. So something like the Floribama complex is an easy recommendation that, yes, customary use is there. In terms of, you know, if we were to look in other areas of the beach that are residential in nature, you know, it's, you know, I've been an employee for 26 years.
Right.
Most of that has been partially involved with the Key or both islands. I certainly have personal observations, but it's, if the board decided to move forward, my recommendation is that you actually hear from the people that, and establish an actual record from people that historically have been
And-
utilizing it.
Yeah, but what you're saying, the establishing of that record, literally, is that's taking documents and taking, I don't go out there, I just literally, so photographs or, you know, statements or, that's where that establishing of a record would be taking documents from the public. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
that certainly would be the
So,
recommendation.
Mike, is that kind of what you're saying, is have staff take a look at where,
Well,
what we think, and then have a public discussion where they're allowed to, where the public is allowed to come and begin to submit evidence to the county about what they think? I mean, because that's going to, it appears that the public part of this is going to be a big part of this discussion. And they have, you know, anecdotal or documentable stories and histories out there for decades, I assume, is a reason that there is this passion about it. So they would have comments, and then they could potentially provide us documents of things that they think are, you know, or why this has been customarily used. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I think that any public opinion on this is good for us to entertain before we go into any kind of ordinance change. But I also think what Tim said, in my talk with legal, one size doesn't have to fit all. I think we could get to a happy medium here, and it doesn't have to be everything. And I think that's how we start. So, and that's, you know, talking with you and legal, that's what I've been told. So.
All right, so Madam Chair, so we're moving forward with the discussion on this on the 28th, is that what? I'm sorry, the 19th, okay. So, are you looking at, you know, I don't know. I'm just kind of saying, I mean, if people have things that they think are important, should we go ahead and say, let them start submitting whatever they think is important to Tim? Or
That's a question for Tim and legal. What do you think?
Or legal, I guess, or whoever.
My recommendation would, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chairman.
No, go.
I mean, we need to begin being the repository for something.
I think you need to take public comment first, and
Okay.
you're doing that on the 19th.
Okay.
Before you guys come up with any sort of direction. I think,
Does the public comment include these things, or are you saying just the comment, just literally the narrative,
yeah, I
oral
think you
narrative?
need to get, I would suggest you get public feedback before you guys direct where we're headed with this. And then you can certainly ask your staff to start, you know, if you want to be amassing a historical record. Some of what I think Commissioner Kohler is referring to is you don't want to end up with a patchwork quilt out there, where you've got some areas where there's customary use, and some areas where the public's not allowed to be, and some areas where you're allowed to have a towel but not an umbrella, and some areas where you can fish but not lay out. And some of that kind of thing has happened in Walton County. So I think what he's saying is send up a trial balloon and see if there are areas where this is not going to be disputed, and then that's your, you know, your ground layer.
Well, we'll see, I guess. It seems unlikely outside of maybe what Tim said, or, you know, a commercial area. I mean, it seems, but, you know, maybe that's possible. But I mean, and I think that it would be good for the discussion on the 19th. I mean, I'm certainly no attorney, but I've been told that the issues are not the same as Walton County. I mean, it's not the same. So, I mean, I don't know that that's
I agree, but
a
what I
perfect
think-
example of what could happen. I mean, you know, the county can and will be sued, you know, if not this week, next week for something. I mean,
Yes.
It's, you know, if you have a pocketbook, you're going to be sued, whether you're a business or an entity or whatever. I mean, a municipal organization, you're going to be sued for anything, for any reason. So, I mean, we can't, you know, we can't set policy and legislative actions out of, you know, avoid, either do things or not do things out of fear
No,
of that.
I agree.
I mean, that's not a good reason, but.
Take the public comment on the 19th, and at that time, if members of the public want to contribute items or bring even items that they think help establish a historical record, I think we should absolutely be open to that. But I
Okay.
do think you need to open it to public comment
Yeah,
before you guys
yeah,
provide
okay.
direction. I think that is Florida's, you know, Participation Act requires that.
I agree, and I think at a board meeting is better because then it's public record versus at a town hall. Commissioner May?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Kohler and Commissioner Berry. I think I do agree that, you know, we should have a public comment on the 19th, Madam Chair. Is that a meeting just solely for customary use, or is that going to be?
No, sir, it's a regular board meeting. At our last board meeting, we decided that we would hear from the staff at this meeting. We would digest that information. The public would be able to digest that information, and then we would come back for a meeting with it being a discussion item on the 19th.
And Commissioner Strobel, I'll yield to you because I've yielded to Gene Valentino, I've yielded to Doug Underhill, because they should know their district. I would say to give this it's right. I mean, to have it on the agenda with something else, it's going to be tough for it to get the attention that it needs. So if you want to do it on the 19th with other things on the agenda, or if you support it calling a special board meeting where it would be on the record, I would support that. I've been pretty consistent in public access for me, or where I am. I don't have to say a lot. I'm not going to say a lot. There are a couple of things that God gives us. He gives us the land, the sea, the fish, the water. And unfortunately, many people are limited access because of affordability of what they can't afford. So I have a fresh memory of my parents being able to go to Johnson Beach for free and walk around in those sands and maybe look up at condos that they could never afford or their children couldn't afford. So maybe the closest that they got to that water was that beach access. I recognize that we may be in lawsuits. If I ever fail in my vote for anything, I'm going to fail on the side of supporting public access, whether it's any beach. Absolutely, it's not like Walton County, Commissioner Berry. We're not unique. You visit California and you go out there and you walk along the beach and you see the celebrities because they live in their condos. When you live downtown, such as I do, people walk on the sidewalks. We maintain those sidewalks. The county may put those sidewalks in, but we have to keep them mowed. We have to keep them cut. We have to keep them clean. That's, if you want to say personal responsibility, there's some personal responsibility. If we talk about liability, as you said, Commissioner Beard, we're going to get sued. I mean, 99% of the time when you pull a body out of the water that's drowned or injured or a shark bite, it's not the point of entry, it's the point of exit. So who's going to be liable, whether the point of entry or the point of exit when someone gets hurt? I mean, so it's not black and white. As you said, Commissioner Schroberger, it may be, simple and hard. But whenever you have emotions and people involved in it, it's going to be hard because we have to make a legislative decision. We have to make a emotional decision, and we have to recognize and listen to all citizens. And so a couple questions for me, Tim, and then I'll be done because, this is certainly probably something that my colleagues up here all have more expertise than I do. The original plat, has anything changed? Who drew from the treaty on, who drew the original plat for these properties? How far does it go back, the historical data of how the original plat was drawn?
So I don't think I can answer that at the moment. I'm aware, I believe there's some of them that was done in the 20s. The one where the easement was U.S. government lands. It was.
So when the treaty was signed and they dedicated the land, have we changed the plats from that? I mean, have they been altered in any ways in the past? Or are all the plats the same as they originally were back then?
So it's my presumption is there's been some additional subdivision that's occurred. You had larger parcels that have become smaller parcels over time. But it's just, I would feel more comfortable to go ahead and do a little more robust review of it. I believe Steve West, under a previous review, did a pretty deep dive. I just don't have it at my fingertips.
No, and that's fair enough. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. And I think, Commissioner Colliday and I would agree with you. If this was real easy and it could have been solved, it would have got solved probably many years ago. And so it has to be a conversation. It's a little convoluted. So I think that, I appreciate Commissioner Berry saying, let's finally get this, on, the front of the agenda and get it solved. You represent that district, Commissioner Schroberger. Haste makes waste. I think we have to take our time and try to get it right and listen to all of the constituency, and then listen to the strongest legal position we have, because a lawsuit is inevitable, but we should be yielding to our legal to say what puts us in the strongest position to preserve the people's money, particularly if we're going to be sued and utilize the people's money to fight this issue, which you'll be using all of the citizens' money, not just certain citizens of the money. And so with that, Stroberger, I'll yield because, we got to have public input. We got to have more debate. I hope that there's a compromise. I hope that there's a way in which, I know you can't vote in a public forum, in a town hall meeting, but for me, it's always important for me to go listen to my constituents that I represent in those settings, to be able to come back and to advocate for them in the best way that I can, knowing that negotiation and policy is about compromise, and that in some way, we're going to have to find the compromise that best benefits all the citizens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sturberger and then Commissioner Kohler.
So I think we need to keep in mind that these are well-defined private properties. The other thing is, you know, I say this all the time in my town halls. I said, I don't count hands. I don't count hands because it's not my control group. You know, the shirts don't make me change my mind. And we have been having communications. You've all been getting the emails that I've been getting. We've all been getting them. So we've been getting public input. This is the input I got just this morning. Connor printed it for me. Just this morning, you ran out of time and you ran out of paper. This is just, and all these are against customary use, all of them.
Where's the stack for?
Every single one of them. So I know that we're going to have more conversations, and we're going to increase public access, even in California. We live in the free state of Florida. Everywhere there's private property, and I think that we need to guard that. Thanks.
Commissioner Kohler.
Yeah, I want to ask Chrissy a question, because, and I want to avoid lawsuits at all costs. I get it that sometimes they happen, but you cited that in Reddington Beach on the 24th, 11th Circuit is going to have a decision potentially. How close is that related to what we're dealing with here? You didn't really, I just don't know. I mean, can you talk much about, I know that it hasn't been decided, but can you share a little bit more about that?
Right, so currently what's going up before, on Reddington Beach before the 11th Circuit is Reddington Beach has a customary use law. They passed their ordinance they passed their ordinance in the window of that 2018 statute that allowed them to use customary use as a affirmative defense should they be sued. And they had witnesses that came forward that said, we used this beach up until somebody kicked us off. And so the court, it looks like that's gonna, so whenever that decision comes down, I don't have their arguments, the two arguments that are on each side, but that decision, when it comes down, will lend a lot of explanation, I'm hoping, will lend some more explanation to these elements that I had up on the board for you. What is that, how is that defined when you have a situation? And I have read many of the emails a lot of the emails that come to you also come to me. They either get forwarded to me or I get copied, or Allison will get copied. And so I see what the argument is on both sides. And I think maybe this will clarify some boundaries and some of the definitions, because since the court wasn't dealing with this directly in the Supreme Court case, they didn't define what these things mean. And we've had to look at customary use as it goes back to the common law of England to understand it. And there really just wasn't that time this morning to go into that deep of an explanation. So I think that's going to answer some questions for us. I just don't, until we have those answers, I would just be guessing.
Well, that's good to know, because that would consider precedent potentially in the state, right? Of how we should deal with these issues?
Right. And the state in some of the research I did, they decided not to set the customary use because they felt that should be done per jurisdiction. It is they relied back on home rule and said each jurisdiction should make that decision.
Okay, well, I'm very interested in that case. Thank you.
So Steve, 19, it's going to be a discussion item that you want, and just discuss it for meetings.
So we're able to speak as educatedly as possible with as much case law as possible. I'm just throwing this out there. Do we want to wait until after that comes down so we have more information? On March 26th, we have a morning meeting. We could have a special meeting the evening of March 26th.
I'm with waiting for that too, if there's a case like that, because we want to do what's right, but at the same time, we want to avoid lawsuits or get ahead of things.
We don't.
I would say yes, sir.
We don't know.
I mean, we're going to still take public input on the 19th, whether we have it on the agenda or not, so.
And there won't be any avoidance of a lawsuit. I mean, if we do this, we won't be avoiding it. We're on ahead. We're on ahead on collision with it.
We're not avoiding it, but we have legal right now telling us that they're not completely prepared to give us the information.
I understand
I mean,
that.
so you're saying, so we are going to get a lawsuit. I mean, well, I'm surely if we don't prevail, I'm going to get a lawsuit based on advice from our legal department, because, who's going to point the fingers when it's all said and done? I mean, ultimately, we get responsible for lawsuits, whether you serve on this board or not. I mean, we're going to get blamed for any lawsuit that happens. And so,
Thank you. And I agree. When I say I want to avoid lawsuits, if it's something that I can take a step back and say, oh, I'd sue the county over that, I would prefer not to move forward. And I think that's probably the lens that most of us look through this through. This is your district, and I want to make sure that we're respectful of that. What would be your preferred timeline on how we discuss this?
I'm okay with the timeline everybody else wants. I'm ready to talk about it. I don't know if any minds will be changed. Can you turn your mic on, please?
Your mic.
I don't know if any minds will be changed between now and then. I have been trying to come up with some compromise with this. I've talked to, there's no compromise with the group in front of us. They want customary use instituted. I've seen one interview from one end to the other end, from the park to the Floribama, and I think that's an overreach. We'll have that talk. We'll figure it out. But in the end, I think everyone's got to be a lot more respectful, no more damn fingers and all that stuff. That really ticks me off. My wife gave me a book a few months ago. This is the book. I brought it with me. It's called The Next Conversation. I don't know if any of the attorneys have read it. It's written by an attorney. It's about verbal discipline and maybe also some physical discipline, and to not get to the point where you can't have the next conversation. That's what we're going to next, the next conversation. So the outrage and the nonsense that goes on in the, with the microphone mafia and those folks, that doesn't get us to the next conversation. If you want to help and you want to come to a compromise, and you need to find out what a compromise is going to be for you too. All right? Thanks.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I know we can't make this decision tonight, but this just is important to me. If we could add it on later tonight or next meeting, it doesn't matter. I would like the board to put on the agenda to, if the board supports it, I don't know how the vote will happen, but we write the Department of Interior to change Johnson's Beach for a daily rate. I really would like to have that added at some point, just to even start the momentum.
I would agree. And then just to make it known, part of the Big Beautiful Bill does allow for free entry for military and veterans. 1 in 5 in our community has served in our military. So if you have that, you're eligible to enter those state parks for free. You just have to go to the website and download that and upload your ID to get that access. So my question is, and I do agree, we all have very passionate opinions about this. I like opinions that are backed by fact and case law. So I think that it would behoove us to wait until that case law comes down on the 24th. Do you want to have a special meeting just for this, is my question.
It's just a small percentage of the people that are going to show up. I mean, people can't even speak today, and they're here. So obviously, they're concerned. I mean, that's going to be a pretty long meeting.
So we have a morning meeting on the
speak.
26th. Do you want to have a special evening meeting on the 26th of March?
If I can I just want to
No,
make
that's
it
too
clear
soon.
that just because the oral arguments are on the 24th does not mean we're going to get a written opinion on the 24th. So we can't control when that would happen. You've seen how courts are. They could sit on it for a week or a year. So I don't want to assume that we're going to be, we may or may not know, most likely we will not know on the 24th how they rule.
Okay, so we'll proceed as scheduled. Okay, just so it's on everyone else's radar, unrelated to this, but we do need to have a joint meeting with the city, so Jose will be reaching out for dates on that.
All right, and Madam Chair, I do have
Yes, sir.
an item that's going to be added to the agenda tonight. It's only, it's an appointment to a board, so just FYI.
Yes, sir, thank you. Is there any other discussion on customary use or any questions for staff? Commissioner Stroberger, anything else? No, thank you. Wonderful, thank you. We are adjourned. I can hardly